Drug epidemic has exploded.
Yeah.
And the city literally, especially OEV, has become the ground zero for the apocalypse of it all. I don't even have words to explain it. Every day it keeps getting worse.
I knew when I got the phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning. I knew right away. He fell down dead on the floor. The fentanyl was poisoned.
Have you called the police? Because there's about 20 people doing open drug use. Foils, smoking, pipes, all right here. All this.
Brutal. That's what I can say about it. It's been 20 years of addiction hitting my home, and my son trying to get help and can't get help.
The prescribing of these short-acting opioids, predominantly hydromorphone, otherwise marketed as dilaudid, has been an unmitigated failure.
In 2016, the building behind me, London Intercommunity Health Centre, became Canada's very first safe supply program. Addicts can enter into the London Intercommunity Health Centre building behind me, and among other services, they can receive hydromorphone tablets instead of taking dangerous and poisonous opioids like fentanyl. The Safe Supply program was designed to combat and fight against the deadly fentanyl epidemic that has killed over 50,000 Canadians since 2016. More Canadians have died to opioid overdoses since 2016 than we lost in all of World War II. But nearly a decade since the start of the Safe Supply program, the debate continues to rage, not just across London, but across the country, as to whether or not Safe Supply, providing government-funded opioids to opioid addicts that they won't overdose on, is actually helping the situation or making it much worse. In this video, you are going to be hearing from mothers who have lost their sons to fentanyl overdose, to parents who have children going through the Safer Supply program. You're going to be hearing from doctors who are on the front lines of this crisis, as well as a whistleblower who used to work inside the building behind me and who is now willing to speak out against the Safer Supply program. For many of the interviews, I have agreed to hide the identities of the people participating, especially the mothers who have lost their children and the mothers who have children going to the program. They want to keep their identity hidden, and I think it's fair to respect that.
So I'm a first-time homeowner, and I was very excited about that. But very quickly I learned where I was living and what the situation was, and it's honestly appalling and heartbreaking and very disheartening, because it's been a long 3.5-year battle of trying to be heard and acknowledged and have some change, because it's extremely unsafe, dirty. It's just nobody wants to live like this. I'd say during COVID, post-COVID, huge amount of encampments. The drug epidemic has exploded. Yeah. And the city literally, especially OEV, has become the ground zero for the apocalypse of it all. I don't even have words to explain it. Every day it keeps getting worse.
Do you feel like your safety is threatened in this city? Like
100%. I've been threatened with a man coming out of a tent with a machete threatening to kill me. My teenage son has been threatened to be killed. My young children were threatened and harmed by homeless people under the influence at the park, Lorne Park. Anytime we ask them to move away from our property when they're up against our fence and we're just trying to enjoy a campfire, or the kids are playing in their tree house, we get insulted, threatened, things thrown at us, the worst of the worst. There's encampments. I have on video myself, and I've forwarded this to everybody is available to us. Drug deals, weapons, prostitution, people openly doing drugs, people in the middle of sexual activity, and exchanges and threats, physical fights. People getting robbed, people getting beat up. Oh, many overdoses are a daily thing. Perfect example. Overdoses. The ambulance is back there in the parking lot, municipal parking lot, number one, like daily, I would say. Multiple times a day. Police presence is there daily as well, patrolling through. But like, I'll give an example. The police will patrol through. Nothing's really done or addressed. They just kind of make their presence known. Within 0.2 seconds after they're gone, there's a drug deal done. There's somebody walking by with a machete.
London is considered one of the ground zeros, not just for the opioid crisis, but specifically for the safe supply programs. Obviously, London Intercommunity Health had the first exemption for safe supply. Have you seen that program make any impact positively or negatively on the city?
Absolutely no positive effect. None. I've actually spoken to a few addicts, not to name names, but there's an ex-tenant neighbor who was in recovery and doing well, and she was on the streets for 15 years. And we had a very long conversation, and I offered my support in any way, and I was excited that, she finally got a roof over her head and such. And she herself explained it's just palliative street care. Instead of giving these people help and hope and starting a new life and being sober and clean, they're just enabling them to stay on the streets. And it's the worst thing for somebody who's deep into drug addiction and homelessness combined. She said it just keeps you have no reason to want to get off the streets.
Do you find that the city government is addressing this crisis as a real crisis?
No, absolutely not. There's constant pushback. There's no transparency. They're fighting it as hard as they can not to address it on a larger scale of really the epidemic and huge crisis it is. It's actually appalling and shocking. I'm baffled. Like, the mayor should have come out himself and made a full-blown speech statement, address it to the entire city, because they just have blindfolds on and they don't want to address it. They're denying, they're hiding, it's really sad for the city. Literally walking by fentanyl. Hi, have you called the police? Because there's about 20 people doing open drug use, foils, smoking, pipes, all right here. All this have you called the police to address it? Just curious. Sorry?
Inside this morning and they started to, we're just trying to remove them off the parking lot. That's we're just removing them. You can't stop them from doing the drugs, but we're on drugs.
Yeah, it's illegal actually. You can call the police, you call 911. You say there's about 20 plus people right now in this specific location. Yeah, because my backyard gives on, I have a house full of kids. My backyard gives on from the parking lot next door there. So I have a big issue with it every single day.
The problem is this. We call police, and we try to talk to them, it's the same thing over too soon.
But you keep calling them. Keep calling them. Yeah, and you keep calling them until they show up.
Yeah, don't we do that. We do that.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
911, what's your emergency?
Hi, could I please have police?
Yeah, for what address?
Parking lot number 2, behind the distillery.
Okay, and what's going on there?
There's about 20 plus people with open drug use, pipes, foils, all kinds. Security just went by, spoke to them too. They should be calling.
Okay, and sorry, do you work for the city or are you just passing through the
No, I'm a resident. I'm a homeowner. Okay. My backyard is involved. Right, yeah. He's a known drug dealer, by the way.
He is?
Yeah, I've seen him. I have him on video dealing drugs in the parking lot, actually.
And that's probably why he didn't want us to.
And the other two we walked by the fence that put their bandanas up.
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing. They're all drug dealers. And a lot of people, I'm sorry, there's a lot of chatter within this community. People are fed up.
Yeah.
There's going to be an uprise, like,
I'm sure.
I'm sure. Something's going to give because people are fed up. And people are kind of doing their own justice now within the community quietly, but it's because we're left no other choice, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think will happen if the city continues to not deal with the problem here?
It'll continue like any area in decline. the good people will move out and the bad people will take over. The nuts are beginning to run the asylum here.
Well, and you're also going to probably end up with possibly boarded up properties. Like if we can't rent ours up, we might as well board it up so there's no vandalism. And you've got
and we spent over $100,000. That house that you just walked in was a hoarder's house that we bought and redid to the specs you see, over $100,000, and look where we are.
So we restore these properties, bring the beauty back. We get amazing tenants in here, and then we end up losing them at times because of the situation.
The city lets us down.
Do you think residents will have to take things into their own hands?
Absolutely, because we're not getting any help from the city. And Oldies Village won't thrive until the city gets serious about containing the recklessness of the criminals and curbing the homelessness. Somebody has to deal with this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and do their job. It's truly become complete lawlessness on Dundas and Adelaide and English and Ontario Street. It's out of control.
Open drug use.
Yeah.
And dealing.
Well, the people you just heard from were two landlords who have properties here in Old East Village. And they were just explaining that they feel that it has become Wild West here, that it's lawless, that no one is following the rules, and that the city doesn't care. They said that ultimately local residents are going to have to take matters into their own hands and actually start taking care of their own communities when it should be the responsibility of the city. But they feel like it's been abandoned. They, of course, didn't want to put their faces out there. They were concerned about retaliation, not just for themselves, but for the tenants in their buildings, because their properties are surrounded by addicts, and it's creating a very unsafe situation. So they wanted to speak out about the situation here, and to respect their privacy, I agree not to show their faces on camera. All right, well, I am just about to sit down and speak to a woman who lost her son to a fentanyl overdose. Now, the footage you're about to see will involve a blurred out face, and the woman's voice will be changed to protect her identity. It's a very tough situation, it's a very tough story, and I hope you can understand why this mother doesn't want to have her identity put out there. But she does want to tell her story and to talk about the situation here in this city.
My son started getting excruciating migraines, just like my mother did and just like I did. The migraines for myself lasted 15 years. Anything the doctor gave me didn't work. When my son started having them, he was often in a dark room crying. There was nothing that the doctors gave him, so he went and he first purchased Percodan off the street. When that wasn't available, his cousin introduced him to fentanyl. And within the 3 years that happened, he died. I spoke to him a few times about it. I was trying to be gentle. And I told him I was very scared, and that every siren that went by, I just wondered if it was my son that was dying. His last words to me were, "It's okay, Mom, nothing's gonna happen." I knew when I got the phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning. I knew right away. And when I answered the phone, my first words were, "Where is my son?" He had been over to his grandma's, and he was in the rec room, and he fell down dead on the floor. The fentanyl was poisoned, and I went over there. And there he was, and it Like my mind was spinning, I didn't know what to do. I thought I did everything that I could. I even tried the tough love with him. And I think I have a lot of regret about that part. Because when I told him he couldn't come here anymore if he was on those drugs, I regret it. Because I would rather have my boy come here than me to have those last words said to him.
When you look at the situation faced by London today with fentanyl and with other programs, what do you think is missing in the approach here to prevent more overdose deaths?
Rehabs. We need rehabs. And I don't mean for someone to stay for a few days. They need help. And I mean, I know why my son started fentanyl. I don't know the story of everybody, but I do know that some people just tried it once. I do know that some people are just feel like they have no hope because they live out on the street. So I think rehabs and getting rid of these sites where they're saying it's safe and whatever, they're not. People are trading those drugs for something else. When I go downtown, I see people everywhere, all over the street with their shoes off, needle marks in them. They're smoking meth in front of me. When I walk through the park, they're all on the benches doing crack. And I'm wondering why they just keep giving these people drugs, trying to normalize it when the road leads to death in the end.
Did anybody involved in the city, or have you spoken to anyone at a political level in the city after what happened to your son? Did anyone reach out to you? Did anyone try to talk with you?
No, nobody did. Nobody. I sent a message just a couple weeks ago over to Susan, and she said she wanted to meet with me. She met me a day or two later, and then she told me that you were contacting me.
Do you feel like the people in charge in London or at the provincial level and even at the federal level, do you feel like they really understand how big of an issue this is?
No, because, well, I don't know if it's completely no. I think they do. I think, for the most part, while I knew my son was going through this, my hands were really tied in what I could do. I would rather have my son hate me for the rest of my life and be alive if I was able to have him locked in a hospital for a little while to get clean than to be dead.
What, on an enforcement level involving the police, what do you think the approach should be to the people who are involved in selling the fentanyl and selling the drugs? I imagine that from your perspective, perhaps they're not doing enough towards those people.
They're not. I think dealers who sell fentanyl should get an automatic 10-year sentence. And those people who are giving those bad drugs are murdering people. it's really upsetting to see criminals go free, and it's very disappointing. Well, I know my son went from someone who didn't smoke weed, didn't smoke cigarettes, he was always in the gym, he was always doing his protein shakes, he was a complete health guy. And very quickly it went downhill. Very quickly. My heart broke when he died. For the 3 years I suffered really bad. Now the pain is still with me. I'm just learning to live with it.
Well, I don't really know what more I could possibly add to that interview. She is devastated. She lost her son. She lost the light in her life because your son is killed from this drug. And as she said there, which is important to emphasize, she believes her son was murdered. And I think that's absolutely accurate. The people who are selling the fentanyl to people on the street, the drug dealers selling fentanyl to people on the street, are murderers. They should be treated as such. And what's remarkable is that in fentanyl super labs, we have routinely let people who have been caught at these super labs out on bail, put them back onto the street, as if they're not cooking up poison that could kill thousands and thousands of Canadians like it already has. Now, take a look at this. This is along Dundas Street in the Old East Village. And row after row of businesses here are just boarded up and empty. Empty lots. It's like the city has been left behind. You're now going to be hearing from a mother whose son has been battling opioid addiction for close to 20 years and who is using London's Safer Supply program.
Brutal. That's what I can say about it. It's been 20 years of addiction hitting my home, and my son trying to get help and can't get help. Going into hospitals, getting out of hospitals. Wait for this to go. He was just actually in the hospital in St. Thomas about 4 years ago, and I was promised that he would not be homeless when he was discharged, that they would find him a place, and they didn't. They dropped him off at the men's mission, which was completely full, and he called me and asked me to come and get his bags, and he would try and figure out where he could go. So he ended up staying with my brother actually for a few days, and then he ended up getting into he got into the church through the Ark, so he was there for the winter program. So he did okay with that, but still, he was still under the drugs and stuff like that. And then he finally seen Dr. Sereda, and she got him onto the hydromorphone, and there has been no change in him. He's still addicted, he's still homeless, there's no improvement, nothing has changed. He's overdosed. He's been in and out of the hospital. It's an ongoing, it just never ends. He's wanting to get help now because he's actually a little bit better. So I don't know if he's still on the program, but I believe he is. But he's starting to get a little more stabilized because he's back at one of the churches through the Ark. So they're helping him. They've been a godsend. They really have. And without them, I don't know, he'd be on the streets. So I know it's enabling, but again, it's a place for him to go, and they do offer some help, right? He's now looking for an apartment, and he thinks he can get an apartment, and he can't. Not without a cosigner. He doesn't have enough money through ODSP. So he's stuck. And then to get a room, today things are very different with whom is owning these homes and who's filling these rooms up. And it's not our people, sorry to say, it's not Canadians, it's immigrants. So he doesn't even have a chance of getting a room. So again, he's stuck. He can't get out of where he's at. And if I help him, that's enabling. He needs to do it on his own, but how does he do it on his own? Right? So I don't know. We're in limbo.
With regards to the safe supply and the hydromorphone program, how did that, do you feel like that has actually led him to be on a better spot, or do you feel like that hasn't really had any impact?
No impact whatsoever. He's still getting high, right? He's still addicted. He hasn't had, say you get on the safe supply and say you have to go to some sort of classes to learn about your addiction and, how can you stop taking pills, or how do they wean them off? They don't. They don't wean them off. They don't do anything. They just keep filling them with more and more and more medications. Well, medications is not the way to go. You need to be completely away from everything. You shouldn't be given safe supply. It's like giving a drunk a bottle of whiskey. How are you going to get sober if somebody keeps giving you that whiskey? Talk to your kids. Tell them that this crisis is a real crisis. It is a pure epidemic. Your kid is not exempt from it. You watch what your kids are doing. You hide your medications. Talk to your kids. Tell them how dangerous it is. And if you have to, take them down to the environment. Show them that you don't want to take these types of drugs because this is how you're going to end up. And you're not getting out of it. This is your life. And it's horrible. Like I said, 20 years for me. And it's been opioids for 20 years. Opioids and methamphetamine. But mostly the opioids. It's been brutal. Brutal.
You may or may not remember that I made a video about London and about London Intercommunity Health Centre last year. And I can tell you, from being on the ground here for the past few hours, the situation in London has gotten worse. It was bad then, but it is even worse now. A large number of businesses have been boarded up and are abandoned along this strip. The number of drug addicts on the street here is noticeably worse. And we have to remember, the people struggling on the street are our countrymen. These are our people who need our help. They are desperate for assistance, and it just doesn't feel like we're giving it to them right now. This woman is a registered nurse and former employee of London Intercommunity Health. She saw firsthand how London's Safer Supply program was being dispensed and provided, and she is now ready to speak up about what she saw.
Well, I saw chaos in the department, Dr. Sarita's office. Chaos, lots of people there to get their dilaudid. It was disturbing to see when they had other medical conditions. It was disturbing to see that that was their priority. So I think, in my opinion, again, we're not helping these people at all. We're making illness, sickness, poverty, infection easier for these people to obtain. Now, to the best of my knowledge, the Safe Supply started in 2016 under a program called My Care. And it was started because of a public health crisis with HIV and Hep C. It was developed as one of the many responses to the crisis. And so short-acting hydromorph was given to low-level sex workers who were injecting hydromorph content. Licit fentanyl was not in town at the time, and it was not a significant problem. Safe Supply did help with the HIV and the Hep C crisis, although what became a problem was diversion, and followed by the problem of fentanyl coming into the city. So in the studies, they misused some of the information, saying that it would help the fentanyl problem. But the studies that were done were not on people using fentanyl. So it just created a bigger problem with the fentanyl. So I find the whole Safe Supply, I'm certainly not an expert on this, but I find Safe Supply to be very complex, presented in a very distorted fashion to the average person in our communities. And I think all you need to do is to look around and see how these people are mistreated, how they're actually living, and what expectations do you have for them? My expectations are, yeah, they're going to do what they have to do to survive. They're going to be involved in crime, break-ins. They're going to go through the correction system. It's an open door. They're on the street. They go to corrections, and they're back on the street. So, I think we can do a much better job. I think we do need to bring back mental health services. As I said, that is a complex diagnosis in itself, and we can't just treat one medical condition. We need to treat all mental health conditions individually, as they should be, which they do affect your physiological health status as well. I do want to say that I don't believe the city councilors are doing what's best for these individuals. They're not doing what's best for the taxpayer. They keep taking taxpayer money, saying it's going to the homeless, but I don't see the benefits to the homeless. Again, they need consistent nutritional meals. They need housing. So City Councillor is a failure. London Intercommunity is a failure. And Safe Supply is a failure. And at some point, we need to say, we have failed. We need to do something different.
And here is London-based retired addictions physician, Dr. Martin Judson. What has happened to the city over the past 10 years?
It's a sad story. The city has decayed from the centre. We have effectively lost our downtown to the presence of crime and open drug use, which is ignored by the police and unfortunately has to be tolerated by law-abiding citizens. And because there's been no intervention, I think those people who are living in the downtown and using feel that there is going to be no consequences for their behaviour, so they just carry on ad lib, and it's a disappointment because the centre of the city is no longer really safe. It has few attractions. There's no appeal to go downtown.
In 2016, when London became the first city to have a Safe Supply clinic, how did that impact the city? And has it made things better or worse?
Well, when you talk about Safe Supply, I always like to qualify that term. The medications that are being prescribed by Safe Supply clinics is just pharmaceutical grade opioids. but because they're predominantly short-acting opioids, this encourages destabilization of the nervous system and exacerbates all symptoms that those using them experience. You have to really emphasize that that is not safe. Those medications are not safe when in the hands of people who suffer with addiction. And I would say the prescribing of these short-acting opioids, predominantly hydromorphone, otherwise marketed as Dilaudid, has been an unmitigated failure. Prior to the setting up of such clinics, we had a few opioid replacement clinics where the main drugs of choice that were prescribed were methadone and Suboxone, and these worked well. Now, I'm not saying that these are medications that suit everybody, but they certainly did well, and they were strictly monitored by the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario, and to a degree the Ministry of Health. But now that physicians are able to prescribe the short-acting opioids, there doesn't seem to be any checks and balances, no controls, and I'm concerned that the good intentions of the physicians prescribing these medications is being overrun by the insistence of the patients who go to these clinics getting what they want as opposed to what they need, which, in my opinion, is medications such as the methadone and Suboxone, if indeed they even need that. One has to bear in mind that most addicted people get better without any medical intervention, well over 50%. But there's a hardcore of people who believe that once you're addicted, you can't change. And that is not the case at all. I've witnessed it in my practice over 40 years, that those who suffer with addiction can get healthy, can return to living healthy lives and productive lives where they look after themselves. So to say that people who suffer from addiction can't help it and they need support, that in itself can be damaging, because that support in actual fact turns into enabling, and it just perpetuates the problem.
How do people get off drugs without any intervention?
They've really got to find or reach that point that they want to get healthy. But unfortunately, for some people, the use of substances is a lifestyle. And I'll just touch on the fact that addiction and substance misuse in general it is a very rich condition. It can be viewed as a disease, and that really justifies why physicians and nurses get involved. But it's also a coping mechanism. It's a lifestyle, and it's also a reflection of the breakdown in societal standards. And so to isolate it and consider it's a disease and put all your efforts into treating it as a disease, that may in actual fact take away the responsibility of the individual patient to take responsibility for getting better. So to answer your question, how do people get better? They reach a point when they realize that continued use of substances is just not worth it anymore, and they need to find a different way of living or managing their problems or dealing with their disease, however they want to look at it. But as some people grow up in addicted families, it is for them a lifestyle. They know no alternative, but unless they're shown an alternative, they're not really likely to change. And I always used to say to patients when they came to see me, I would quote the famous lines of Confucius, who said, "The way out is through the door, but how come so few choose to take that route?" And as people who are trying to assist people who are addicted, we have to show them where the door is and show them how to get through. But at the same time, we need to support them going through the door. And, if I may add, if they don't go through the door, they need to be aware that there are consequences. And they have to realize that open drug use in the city is something that should not really be tolerated, because what you permit, you promote. No, I think you need to have a long-term vision, and once it's formulated into policies and enacted, then stick to it and don't tinker with it, don't change. Again, really, the opioid replacement therapy using methadone and Suboxone was working well. Why did we have to introduce this alternative? And people who introduced it, I don't think they really studied it. When I was a medical student in the UK, patients were being prescribed heroin, and that was before methadone was available. But it was discovered fairly promptly that it wasn't working. It was making the problem worse, so they stopped it. But I know society has a tendency to repeat itself, and one thing we learn from history is that we don't learn from history. And so that's why I say we need to come up with some stringent policies, long-term, and stick to them. And let's have politicians not tinker with that long-term plan.
The Ontario government knows that the Safe Supply program is just simply not working as advertised. That is why, at the beginning of this year, the provincial government passed legislation which restricts provincial funding from going to services like the building you see behind me. A clinic that provides Safe Supply can no longer receive any provincial funding. They also made a rule that said safe consumption sites could not be within 200 meters of a school or a childcare facility. In Alberta, the Safe Supply program is all but eradicated. So the tide is turning on Safe Supply. But for whatever reason, the City of London is in a downward spiral, particularly this area in Old East Village. If you like this content and you want to see more reporting across the country on the deadly fentanyl epidemic that has taken far too many lives in this country, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can stay up to date with all of my original journalism on this topic and on many others. Thank you all for watching.